You may have seen Kesava Maharaj on social media. He has a large social media influence. And in 2022, he co-founded Gita, which is now the fastest growing online portal for learning the Bhagavad Gita in a powerful, exciting, and life-changing way. Nowadays, he travels the world teaching in eminent academic institutions, Fortune 500 companies, governmental organizations, and spiritual communities. So, as Maharaj is a great inspiration for all of us at Bhakti School and here in New York. And the schedule for tonight is Maharaj is going to speak for a little bit, and then we're going to have some time for question and answer. And also, we have 4 of Maharaj's books for sale as well, and Raj is going to tell you about that after the class. And we're going to have some question and answer, and then end Kirtan, and then we'll have a great Prasadam feast. So without further ado, let's give a great round of applause to Swami.
Maybe I'll just carry it.
You want to carry it?
Yeah, I think so. Good evening, everyone. So nice to see everyone. Can you give us a big Hare Krishna? Hare Krishna! Wonderful, wonderful. So happy to be here. Could you put your hands up if you're here like for the first time ever to an event like this? Okay, a few of you. Thank you so much. Welcome. Thank you for being so open-minded and for coming along. This is a beautiful space in which we can all come together and in an open-minded and open-hearted way explore some wisdom that can really empower and encourage us in our journeys through life. And so today I was given a topic about communication, about how to share our ideas, what is deep within us. How do we powerfully do that in the world? And it's actually a very, very beautiful topic. Communicating became something very, very central to my life. Actually, I grew up very, very shy, very introverted. And I have to admit to you, public speaking was the last thing I had on my to-do list. I never planned to be a speaker. I never planned to be in front of the audiences. But somehow or other, my life went in this direction, and I'm still improving, I'm still trying. But learning how to communicate has become such a big part of my life. And I think it's a big part of all of our lives, because communication is probably the #1 human skill. I remember once I was on a Zoom call, and there's a moment in the Zoom call, a discussion was going on, and at a moment I had a flash of inspiration. So right there I began speaking, my emotions were rising, I felt like I was sharing, like what was deep within my heart. And I really was like on a roll, and by the end of it, I felt, after a few minutes, I'd given my best. And then I heard a sound, "You're on mute." I was like, oh my God. Anyway, in that moment, I unmuted and said, "Can you repeat what you just said?" And I was like, I can't repeat, I can't do it again, And it's interesting, "You're on mute." It's become like one of the big things of our age. But actually, maybe that tells something about the story of our life. Maybe we're speaking and speaking and speaking, but people aren't really hearing anything at all. They say when you're young, your parents don't listen to you. When you're a bit older, your teachers don't listen to you. When you get to work, your bosses don't listen to you. When you get married, your husband or your wife don't listen to you. When you have children, your children don't listen to you. And when you're old, nobody listens to you. So sometimes we may go through our life and we may feel like I'm speaking, but no one's really listening. No one's really receiving. I don't feel like, #1, people are hearing me. Or sometimes we think people are hearing me, but I don't think people are understanding me. Or sometimes we think people are hearing me, they're understanding me, but they're not being moved by me. They don't want to do, they don't want to act on what I'm saying. So sometimes we get a little frustrated because we can't communicate as we'd like to. And so today I'm going to share with you a little bit about communication. But before we do that, I'm just going to say this little prayer. It's not a little prayer, it's a big prayer. It's a beautiful prayer. And it's a prayer that we kind of invoke before we begin a spiritual discussion, which really helps us to connect ourselves to a higher source of wisdom. Gratitude is so important because unless we appreciate what we have, it's very, very difficult to receive more. And so before any spiritual discussion, we take a moment just to offer a prayer of gratitude to our teachers from whom we've learned so much. And in that open-hearted offering of gratitude, we become available to receive more. So you can follow along with me, and in these moments, just remember those people who have given you so much that helps you on your journey. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respect unto my spiritual teachers who have opened my eyes, which were blinded by the darkness of ignorance, with the torchlight of knowledge. Today I want to begin by asking you a question. Can you think in your life of some words that you heard, which in some way, shape, or form have impacted, influenced, and done something to change the trajectory of your life? They could be the words from a loved one. They could be the words from a philosopher. They could be the words from a Hollywood movie. They could be the words from just a passerby, a stranger. But some words in your life, something someone said to you and something that you received through your ears, words which have changed you. Can I ask you to share that with the person next to you, and just for 2 minutes, just to recall that? Is a very important part of today's session, yeah? So please share with the person next to you an instance that you can recall in your life where you received some words which impacted you quite deeply. Go ahead. Okay, maybe we can get everyone back. So thank you so much for sharing your words. Lots of words, lots of words. Anyone like to share with us some words, or you can share what your partner said, even if they don't give you permission. Please share. Tell us something that impacted you. Don't worry if you think it's too insignificant that others may not. Yes?
Don't trouble unless trouble troubles you.
Don't trouble unless trouble troubles you. Sounds like something you need to learn in New York. And who told you that?
A student in high school. I was in the first grade of class,
Okay.
first form.
Uh-huh.
She was in the fifth form.
Okay.
And I was coming down the road during break.
Okay.
And there was a branch hanging over the tree, and there was a wasp nest on it. So I take stones and I'm throwing at it. And she came riding by. And she stopped, and she broke it.
Amazing. Okay. And that shaped your life. Okay, wonderful. Interesting. Yes, someone else. Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Oh, Hare Krishna. And where did you first hear the words Hare Krishna?
Well, I first heard them in 1969 or so. But that was in a different context. It's when I entered into a Krishna temple in 1970, and I was given, then it was, here it is, take this, Hare Krishna.
Okay, wow.
And then that changed it.
That changed it all. Wonderful, wonderful, yes. Another one more. Words which changed your life. Yes.
Nothing happens if you don't show up.
Nothing happens if you don't show up. You have to be in it to win it. You have to make an endeavor, make a try. The only strategy that's destined to fail is to not take a risk. So yes, wonderful, yes. So these are words which we received. So words have the power to actually change our trajectory. And actually, if we look, this is basically what happened in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna offers words to Arjuna. The words consist of a conversation which doesn't last a long time, 45 minutes. But in this transmission of words, Arjuna's entire vision has shifted, is completely changed. And Arjuna does a complete U-turn in terms of his way of thinking, his way of perceiving life, his way of interacting and dealing with problems that he has. And therefore, the ability to receive words and the ability to share words in a powerful way is something which can actually be incredibly life-changing if we learn how to kind of master that art. And this is the Bhagavad Gita. These are the words which were shared from the mouth of Krishna thousands of years ago, which people still read, which people still try to understand, and which people derive incredible and great benefit from. And what we're going to do today is something very interesting, because often we look at the Bhagavad Gita for its theological content. But you can also gain so much from the Bhagavad Gita on many, many other levels. And today I'm not going to tell you so much about what Krishna says to Arjuna and why that's so powerful. But what I'm going to try to share with you today is how Krishna says what he wants to say to Arjuna and why that makes it even more powerful. Because often you can have a great message for the world. You can have a great message for other people. You can have something very, very worthwhile to say, but it's not guaranteed that the other person's going to receive it. And therefore, how we communicate something is also incredibly, incredibly important. A great thinker of our time, Aristotle, he comes up with this beautiful model. He was a great thinker himself. He had very clear ideas, and he was a very, very good communicator. And in some of his writings, he talks about the art of persuasion. Everyone's trying to persuade someone to do something. And he says, in order to persuade someone, you can appeal to three things: logos, ethos, and pathos. But what he goes on to say is that if someone is able to complete this entire circle in the way in which they communicate with others, then what happens is they can have an incredibly persuasive effect on other people. And so he goes on to explain what these things actually mean. Logos refers to the logic of what you're saying, the ideas that you're trying to communicate to someone. Ethos refers to yourself as a speaker and what you exude in terms of your own character. And pathos refers to what you invoke within the person you're trying to communicate to. And so these are kind of the three broad kind of areas of influence: the idea, the person giving the idea, and what we're invoking within the person receiving the idea. And what he says is that when the idea has clarity and logic, when the speaker has character and authority, and when they're able to deliver that clear message from a good character with a certain charisma and a certain finesse, and a certain emotion and a certain conviction, then what that does is it has an incredibly persuasive effect on others. Because what Logos does is it helps people to trust your intelligence. Ethos, what it does is it helps them to trust you in terms of the person delivering that. And pathos, what it does is it invokes in something within them whereby they trust their emotions. And if people trust these things, then they're very, very likely to act on what you have to tell them. And so he goes on, and other commentators and on this go on to talk about how you can solidify and fortify all of these aspects. So you increase your logos by deeply thinking about what you want to share to others, by having it very, very clear in your mind. If something isn't clear up here, if something isn't defined up here, if something isn't very, very logical up here, when it comes out of here, it's not going to be defined, logical, or in most likely unintelligible to others. And so he says one has to have facts, figures, reasoning, good arguments before they communicate. Before you communicate, you also have to already be thinking, how may someone respond to this? What may be their arguments or their kind of inhibitions? And you factor that into how you communicate. And if you look at Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he does exactly this. Krishna doesn't use strong spiritual arguments, but Krishna also uses watertight logic. And he does this actually on many occasions, but here I'm giving you one example of how Krishna's logic is just so infallible. Krishna and Arjuna on the battlefield, and Arjuna is having serious doubts about whether he should engage in the warfare because he'll be killing others. So what Krishna says to Arjuna is that they're all spiritual beings, and spiritual beings never die. And therefore, why are you lamenting at the fact that you're going to be killing them? Because you have to understand, you can't kill anyone because everyone is eternal. But then what Krishna does is he uses a type of logos whereby he switches the argument. And he says to Arjuna, but if you don't believe me that we're spiritual beings and we live forever, and therefore we shouldn't lament for the death of someone, if you don't believe that, if you think we're chemicals, then you still have no reason to lament. Because if we're matter, if we're chemicals, if we came from nothing, if we ultimately merge into nothing, if the ultimate goal of life is that we're ultimately just chemical interactions, if everything's matter, nothing matters. And he says, so therefore, if you believe me this way, or if you don't believe me and you want to go this way, you still have no reason to argue with me. So Krishna kind of does a logos checkmate on him. And so you can see that Krishna, when he presents knowledge to others, he covers all the bases and he makes it very, very watertight and very, very logical. In ethos, what we have to do is we have to give people confidence in who we are. Therefore, for example, when a speaker comes like this evening, Hadai Pran kindly gave me a nice introduction. And what that does is that increases my ethos. You kind of look at me and think, yeah, could be a guy worth listening to. He is on Instagram and he has some followers. So endorsements, our own knowledge, our trustworthiness, how we carry ourselves. Gandhi said, my life is my message. And therefore, to the extent that we're embodying what we seek to teach, that's very, very powerful. Sometimes they say, I can't hear what you're saying because your character is speaking so loud. I can't hear what you're saying because your character is speaking something contrary to what you're trying to share with me. And therefore, ethos means we have to develop this. And Krishna also gives Arjuna a lot of confidence in where he's coming from, who he is. Here in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, or Arjuna says, you are the eternal, transcendental, original person, the unborn, the greatest. All the great sages, such as Narada, Sita, Devala, and Vyas, confirm this truth about you. And so, therefore, through this kind of reasoning, we begin to gain confidence that yes, Krishna and what he's saying, the position from which he's speaking is an authoritative position. And this is something we can also work on. And pathos means that even when we have a very clear idea and we have good character, we have to deliver it with some charisma, deliver it with some emotion, deliver it with some genuine feeling, deliver it from a deep space within our own heart. And when we do that, when we invoke emotion in the way in which we deliver something because we deeply believe in that, then what happens is that invokes something within someone else that makes them want to then act on it. And we see Krishna does this. He invokes this emotion. He says, oh Pritha, oh Arjuna, don't yield to this degrading impotence. It doesn't become you. Give up such petty weakness of heart and arise, O chastiser of the enemies. You can see how Krishna is speaking to awaken this sense of in Arjuna that I'm better than this, I can do better than this, I should be better than this. And that emotion then also pushes Arjuna to think deeply. So now think about a conversation that you've had. Think about a time when you've tried to communicate to others. It could be something you wanted to, an idea you wanted to get over in a meeting. It could be a public speech that you were trying to give. It could be a conversation you were trying to have with someone. It could be a debate in which you were trying to refute certain arguments. And think about a situation in sometimes in which you felt that maybe you weren't heard. And if you weren't heard, it's likely that something here or a combination of these three things were missing. And so this is one very, very key insight we begin to understand about what the secret to communication is. It's more than what you say. It's more than the words coming out of your mouth. There has to be a lot more around it if you want other people to receive it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share with you a few more things, and then I'll kind of open it up just to hear whether you may have any thoughts, any comments, or any inputs. Here we are talking about communication. And essentially, everyone in this world is a leader. Because if you want to give advice to someone else, you're a leader. If you have position, you're a leader. If someone looks up to you, you're a leader. And therefore, everyone to some extent in this world is a leader. We're all in positions of leadership. However, you can't be a leader if you don't have any influence. If you're a leader but you don't have any influence, then you're not going to really be leading much. And therefore, every leader must have influence. But in order to have influence, what you need to have is relationship. Because if you don't have relationships with others, there's very, very little chance that you're going to have any influence over anyone. But in order to have relationship, what do you need to do? Communicate. Communication is the basis of having relationship. Relationship is the basis of having influence. And to the extent that you have influence, you then become a leader. And remember, everyone is a leader in their own spheres of activity. And so how we communicate with others will very, very much affect how effectively we're able to play our various roles in our lives. And what I'm going to do very, very quickly is show you, we could talk about this for a long time, but I'll show you very quickly 5 immediate lessons you can learn about how to communicate effectively from how Krishna delivers the knowledge that he wants Arjuna to grasp. And the first one is, expression brings comprehension. The most incredible thing about the Bhagavad Gita is that the whole conversation begins, and for practically one chapter, Krishna, who's the supreme divinity, who's all-knowing, who kind of, knows everything within your heart before you've even vocalized it, that divinity says practically nothing. In the very first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, all Krishna does is that he listens. Because when you allow people to express themselves, then it builds a relationship, it builds a confidence, and it builds an understanding. And without that kind of basis, it's very, very difficult to communicate. It's amazing in this world. We're taught to read, we're taught to write. Some of us are also taught to speak, but how much were we taught to listen? They say attention is the rarest and purest type of gift you can give to someone else. And Krishna gives that undivided attention to Arjuna. And he takes the time to understand his needs, his interests, and his concerns. If you want to raise the volume of your words, then you have to raise the value of your words. And the way you raise the value of your words is by understanding the needs, interests, and concerns of the person that you're speaking to. A man once came to his priest and he said, "My wife is shouting and shouting. I just don't get her." So the priest said to him, "I want you to go back and listen to her carefully." So he went back and he listened to her carefully. And he came back to the priest and he said, "I'm even more confused." And the priest said, "Brilliant. Now I want you to go back and listen to everything she's not saying." What do you mean? But I can't hear that. That's the problem. Now I want you to hear the unheard, the feelings uncommunicated, the problems not raised, the triggers causing her to do what she's doing. And he went back. And this time, beyond the noise, he tried to hear the heart. And he came back. I'll get it now. Because there's so much of a hidden, seek first to understand and then be understood. And so Krishna teaches us. He could have just gone in there and started speaking, but he didn't. He took the time to really understand, because expression brings comprehension, brings understanding, brings relationship. So if we're not willing to listen to others, if we're not willing to listen to the world, then the world won't listen to us. And this is the first thing that Krishna teaches us. The second very, very interesting thing about the dialogue of the Bhagavad Gita is the next key to communication that Krishna gives us is inspiration is way more powerful than imposition. At the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna recognizes that he's completely confused. So he comes to Krishna and he's like, "Krishna, can you tell me the answers?" And Krishna is kind of like, "Are you sure you want me to be your guru? I think you're okay. Do you really want me to do it?" Arjuna practically has to plead him. And then Krishna is like, "Okay." And then throughout the whole conversation of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is giving all these ideas, and he keeps using the Sanskrit words, "Iti me mati, iti me mati." He keeps saying to Arjuna, "I'm giving you these ideas, but it's just my opinion. Just my opinion." I mean, this is divinity speaking. Just my opinion. And the amazing thing is, at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, after Krishna has given all the ideas to Arjuna, then he kind of looks at Arjuna and says, I've given you the best of what I could give you. Now you do what you want to do. That is amazing. From the beginning to the middle to the end of the conversation, at no point does Krishna impose himself on Arjuna and lay any expectation that Arjuna should follow what he has to say. That's amazing. Because inspiration is way more powerful than imposition. Another very, very interesting conversational and communication dynamic you can see in the Bhagavad Gita is this one. Dialogue resolves differences. The secret to communication is that it's never one way. The secret to communication is to actually get feedback from the person you just communicated to. Because when we're trying to communicate, what we're trying to do is give people a vision of where they can go. But what we need to hear from them are all the obstacles between them and that space. And unless we hear from them, we have no idea what's blocking them. And therefore, sometimes you may keep telling someone, be here, do this, get here, this is the goal. But what we do, we don't take the time to hear from them. What's the issue with getting there? And then we feel people are not listening to me. They are listening to you, but they also need to be listened to. They also need to be given an opportunity to respond to what you've just asked them. And therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asked Krishna 17 questions. And at no point is Krishna like, why are you asking so many questions? He invites it. He encourages it. Because dialogue resolves differences. Another very, very interesting conversation and communication dynamic of the Bhagavad Gita is that Krishna doesn't just tell Arjuna, do this or it's finished. Krishna gives alternatives. The Bhagavad Gita is not a book of commandments. The Bhagavad Gita is a book of choices. And the best communicators, what they do is they communicate in such a way as to not to tell people what to think, but to teach them how to think. And therefore, Krishna kind of says, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this, or you could do this, and just be aware that whatever direction you go in, there's going to be ramifications. But now you choose what you want to do. The best communicators don't create followers. The best communicators create leaders. The best communicators give people options, and then they inspire people to own their own decision so that they'll be more invested and they'll take more responsibility for it. And so, for example, in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna will say, like, you could do this, but if you can't do this, you may want to do this. And if you can't do this, you may want to do this. That is such a powerful way to communicate. Because rather than directing people, we should encourage people to think for themselves. And this is exactly what Krishna does. And the fifth and final one, there could be many more, but this is the fifth and final one I want to share with you today, of how Krishna is such a powerful communicator. Individuality unlocks potentiality. And what Krishna does when he speaks to Arjuna is he never has a stereotyped message. He looks at Arjuna, he looks at his situation, he relates it to him, and he meets him where he is, and he treats him as an individual. If you want to take someone somewhere, first you have to meet them where they are. And that means to really treat people as individuals. When we're speaking to people, if people think we're just giving them an impersonal, premeditated, pre-planned message, people won't be as moved. But when they really feel that you're speaking to them as a person, understanding where they're coming from, then people will be much more inspired to value and digest and act on your words. And so this is why the Bhagavad Gita is so incredible, because it's not just that the contents are amazing, but even the way in which the contents are delivered carry such a powerful lesson for each one of us if we actually want to be powerful communicators in the world. This human superpower to be able to share ideas with others can change people's lives. It can make the world a really, really beautiful place. And it can make our lives so meaningful and rewarding. However, we have to learn the art and the secret of how to offer those words with humility, with clarity, and ultimately with impact and force. And that is what I wanted to share with you today. So in summary, we talked about how if we want to communicate or persuade, then we need logos, ethos, and pathos. And as we look at the dialogue of the Bhagavad Gita, these are 5 very, very clear lessons. Expression brings comprehension. Always lend people your ears and try to understand their needs, interests, and concerns. Number 2, inspiration over imposition. Try to inspire and move people rather than imposing and forcing people or kind of intellectually cornering them or emotionally blackmailing them into following you. Dialogue resolves differences. Remember, get feedback. Don't be frustrated if you act and you feel you speak and you feel people don't receive it. Try to understand what are the blocks. Give alternatives, not directives. Remember, we're not just out there to tell people what to think. We're trying to encourage them how to think. And finally, individuality unlocks potentiality. Treat an individual as an individual. Be personal. Often we'll come to a talk and we may have some idea in our mind of what we want to say. And then sometimes we look at the audience and in the moment we think, I've got to say something else. Because more important than our pre-planned speech is to really try to serve who we're speaking to. And that means we try to really understand where they're coming from and where they are. So these are some things I wanted to share with you on the secrets of communication. Today, tomorrow, you'll go out into the world and you'll be communicating, either in conversations, in meetings, in public forums, in formal situations, informal. And remember these things, that you have the ability to make your speaking a superpower, to really communicate powerfully. And this is a gift that's given to each one of us. But it requires us to really understand how to fully utilize that gift. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. All right, dialogue resolves differences. So I kind of open it up to the floor. We have some time for some questions. Yeah. I'll open it up to the floor. Perhaps you may have some comments, some questions, or something that you may want to know a little bit more about. And I'm very happy to respond to that if anyone would like to ask.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you so much for a wonderful session. Prabhu, whenever I want to preach about Krishna to someone, I start with your videos. So I go to YouTube and share your videos with them. I guess that's something like basic, and I just love your videos. So Prabhu, in many of your videos, you have talked about one thing, and that is the people with good karma, how to identify them. And you talk about 4 traits, that they're born in a good family, they're wealthy, they're intelligent, and they're good beauty, those 4 traits you mentioned. But Prabhu, what we often observe around us, that people, like if you just take example of New York City, there are people who are very beautiful, very intelligent, they're all these four traits, but they're so far away from Krishna consciousness. So ideally, if somebody carries a good karma, they should be very Krishna conscious. So I often keep thinking about that, and today you have yourself, I have you here to get that answer from you. So that's my question. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Slightly different to our conversation, but I'll address it, and then we can talk more in detail. Essentially, according to Vedic philosophy, we all come into this world with a stock of karma. And four classic ways in which you can tell like the level of someone's karma is their family upbringing, their beauty, their wealth, and their intellectual capacity. These are all gifts of good karma. So the question here is, it seems as though often the people who have great stocks of karma in these aspects don't always seem to be the most spiritual. So why is that? And yes, this is talked about by the sages, that good karma can go two ways. It can lead to a sense of pride, a sense of comfort, a sense of complacency, and a false and illusory sense of happiness that can divert one away from spirituality. And in other people's cases, that good karma can be used to invoke a sense of gratitude, a sense of appreciation, a sense of humility, and a sense of wanting to give back and serve because one has received so much. And so some people go in that direction. And so good karma is not necessarily in any way a guarantee of spirituality. And in the same way, bad karma is also not a guarantee of materialism. Sometimes people who really struggle, who may not have very good karma at all, sometimes become the most spiritual people. And so karma may be there, but it's not necessarily directly correlated to one's spiritual accomplishment. Does that make sense? All right, thank you so much. Yes. If we can keep the questions direct to this, that would be just because then we can go in the topic a little deeper.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My question is, should we have a conversation or a dialogue with people we know who are coming in bad faith to us? Or should we try to persuade them? I'm always confused in this situation. What would you? That's it.
So should we begin to open a dialogue with people who are coming with some bad faith, or who already have some premeditated ideas? Basically, we have to begin a conversation and see how open someone is. Krishna doesn't speak to Arjuna until he sees how open Arjuna is. And based on someone's openness, he then reveals as much as is relevant to that situation. And so we can always communicate, but we should also know how much to say in what situation according to how much that person is able and capable to receive at this moment in time. And so I wouldn't say it's black or white. I would say open up conversations with people, try to understand where they're at, develop a relationship with them, and over time people may open up and be willing to hear from you more. Communication is not just also one conversation. Sometimes it requires multiple investments before one can actually really reach someone else's heart like that. So remember, expression brings comprehension. Yeah? Yes? Oh, okay, yeah.
This is in relation to alternatives, not directives.
Yeah.
And you were pointing out that Krishna is saying he gave so many different options. He didn't place a demand. And so it reminded me of, there's an author named Gary Chapman. He's the author of the book, The 5 Love Languages. And he says, requests, it shows the direction to love. Like if you make a request, I need some help around the house. If it would be nice if you could help in this way. But if you demand, then it's even if you follow that demand, it just becomes your obedience. It's not really, you're not showing your, when you respond to that, it's not showing as an expression of love. You're just being obedient to the demand. So it's the same kind of thought that was going there.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, when we give alternatives but not directives, or we give requests rather than, demands, then what we're doing is we're giving that person an opportunity to make a choice, through their own volition. And that ability for someone to make a choice out of their own volition is an expression of love. And an expression of love builds a relationship and builds an opportunity for that love to actually increase. So yeah, thank you so much. Beautiful point. Go on.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Enjoyed your talk, how you draw parallels between the Gita and the Aristotle, and how to relate to today's communication problems. The problem we have is how do we communicate with everybody else in this day of instant communication and text messaging and social media? Nobody talks anymore.
Yeah.
Kids don't talk, friends don't talk, the wives don't talk. Sometimes they're in the same house, they text from upstairs. I text back, is dinner ready? And there's no dialogue to resolve a difference. There's no inspiration. Sometimes we live in the same house, there's no inspiration. Sometimes there are no alternatives because texting is very short, it does not give you options. Sometimes it's very direct. So it's very difficult these days.
Yeah, it's a fact. It's a disease of the age. Once a little girl, she writes a beautiful poem, The Paradoxes of Our Time. She says, we have taller buildings but shorter tempers. We have wider highways but narrower minds. We have more conveniences but less time. We've multiplied our possessions but we enjoy it less. We lose our health to get wealth, and then we spend that wealth to try and get our health back. We've conquered outer space, but we're struggling with inner space. And then she said, we're more connected than ever before, but we're further and further apart. And therefore, we have to build boundaries with communication technology. There has to just be times in the day where we just say, I don't go there, and I actually communicate to people, with people. You can never replace face-to-face conversation. There is a meeting of hearts. Even with spiritual transmission of knowledge, it's very good. We use all the platforms. But this opportunity we're having now to have a real exchange, this is actually very, very so much a central part of spiritual culture. This is where real exchange is made. And that's something that's being lost more and more in the world. And you'll see that the happiest people, the most progressive people, the people who develop the best of their character and the best of their potential do it because they have relationships. Relationships are everything. And relationship comes through communication. And quality communication means face-to-face, if you can. So yeah, it's really about, we're never going to be able to turn it around and leave all these technologies behind, and we don't need to. The technologies also have their benefits, and in many ways they can help us, but we have to know what their limit is, and we have to know at what point we're becoming owned by them rather than owning them. Some thoughts. I see loads of hands. I don't know how long we should go.
3 more questions.
Okay, cool.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for the talk. Just a question based on the kind of principles that you gave at the end. I sometimes find that in my dealings with other people, even though I'll understand these principles and try and take them home, in conflict, which is basically everywhere, and so easy to get into. These principles just kind of go out the window in the moment. So I just wanted to ask, is there something outside of communication, direct communication, that we can do to better place ourselves to apply these principles?
Thank you so much. Yeah, such a good question. It seems as though there's an impulsive tendency, a kind of overwhelming emotion within us which impels us to do things in the moment that we really don't want to do. And all our good intelligence seems to go by the wayside at that time. In the world, they talk about this. They talk about IQ and they talk about EQ. And they talk about how social scientists used to think that the people who had the highest IQs were the most wealthy, successful, and prosperous. But later on, they realized that if they don't have EQ, if they don't know how to manage their emotions, if they can't mediate relationships, if they can't deal with changing environments and they become emotionally displaced, then those displaced emotions means they can't access their intelligence. And so what is the real means to deal with our emotional state? And here the Bhagavad Gita is incredibly powerful as well, because the Bhagavad Gita really identifies the mind as almost the seat of those emotional states. And therefore, so much of the Bhagavad Gita is spent in talking about the movements of the mind, the ways and the means by which we can befriend the mind, the ways and methods by which we can become observers of our mind, and how we can begin to utilize our mind for upliftment rather than be utilized by the mind and be degraded. And so all of these techniques are given of how to deal with the mind. And that in itself is a whole seminar, but we could say things like, of course, meditation, and becoming more and more accomplished in being able to observe one's own emotions. Another one is what Krishna talks about in the Gita is sattva, or a certain lifestyle, and a certain set of habits, which mean that one is much more emotionally stable, and one is much less likely to veer towards any kind of extreme responses in situations. Another very, very important one is sangha, or in Sanskrit we say sangha, so association. So all of these kind of techniques are given as ways in which we can remold our mind to become much more emotionally stable individuals. Most people in this world, we are emotional roller coasters. It's just like you wake up in the morning and someone just looks at you funny. And it's like for the rest of the day, like, whoa. We become so hijacked. So this really requires an accomplishment of how to deal with the mind. So yeah, that is also a whole nother topic. Thank you. Some thoughts.
Hare Krishna, Swamiji, we're here.
Okay.
So the Bhagavad Gita, is in the Mahabharata, and the Mahabharata, the war began because of lack of dialogue. One party refused to come to the table or was indifferent to that. And so many times we see, whether it's relationships at work, at home, there is some conflict, but one party is either indifferent to it or chooses not to, come to the table to have a discussion.
Engage, yeah.
So then how conflicts, or how does dialogue happen in those situations? Like he says, dialogue resolves difference, but if there's no one to dialogue with, how is that difference resolved?
Yeah. Yeah, of course, we cannot force people. Just like Krishna doesn't force himself on Arjun to have a dialogue. Krishna is waiting to see how open Arjun is, and then he engages fully in dialogue. It wasn't Krishna that started the conversation. Krishna waited for Arjun. So we have to wait till people are open. Sometimes people may even be willing to have a dialogue with you, but they may not be open. And so it's one of those things whereby we have to have the patience, we have to have the acumen to understand when to extend and where to extend our energies. And in situations where other parties may not be willing to have dialogue, then what can we do? Then we have to look towards other measures. So communication can only take place when there is willingness on both sides. But what the great spiritualists do is that they never close the door on anyone. This is a very, very important principle. That what we often do in the world is we open up for dialogue, and if the person doesn't reciprocate or respond as we would like, we're very, very quick to cut relationships. In this world, we just drop relationships like this. But what you see in actually spiritual culture is that there's an understanding that I don't judge the person. Where they are doesn't determine who they are. So right now, they may not be in a very good emotional space, but I don't define them by that, and I'm ready to engage with them if they come out of that space and they're open. So that requires great maturity. But if we live our life like that, we might find that we live much happier lives, because if we don't, we'll lose a lot of relationships that could have blossomed into something very beautiful. So, otherwise it's kind of like, why aren't you speaking to that person? Because 23 years ago on that Thursday morning at 10:15, they said that, and you're like, what, you remember that? That's amazing. So we also, forgiveness is a huge part of dialogue and communication. Anyway, don't want to go off on a tangent.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I think.
Okay, we are done. No more communication.
Let's give a big round of
Thank you
applause.
so much, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, I hope you come back every year for a longer period of time. We would just like to invite Raj up, and he's going to speak a little bit about Maharaj's books that are going to be for sale afterwards. Let's give a big round of applause to Raj also.
Okay, Hare Krishna everyone, thank you so much. So we have 4 of Maharaj's books available, and particularly those of us who have heard of Maharaj, he's got so many insights, so much knowledge, we would have heard a lot of it today. But Maharaj has been spending years compiling many of these books, and they're completely incredible. We'd highly recommend you get all of them, but I'll give you a quick overview of what each one is, and then you can kind of judge for yourselves. So we've got Gita Free. Gita Free is a practical workbook. It's got exercises in there which you can do, it's got meditations, it's got different things which we can actually take part in. And it covers key teachings from the Gita and takes us on a bit of a journey. We then have Gita Life, which is a summary of the whole Bhagavad Gita in acronyms. We have Tattva, which is, so if those of you who don't know, Maharaj also has a blog online. It's incredible, he shares quite regularly on that. And so Tattva 2 is a compilation of Maharaj's blog, and it's in a question and answer form. So I could see today many of us have questions. Tattva 2 answers some of the most difficult questions we may have in life, so it's, again, really helpful to have. And finally, we've got Book Bhagavad, which, similar to Gita Life, it's a summary of Bhagavatam, right? But it's done in acronym forms, and it's quite easy to digest with different diagrams and things. So we've got these 4 books available today. We take card payments. If you would like to get any, you can come and see us at the end. Maharaj may be around for a little bit of time to sign some of them as well. And yeah, I think that's it. So I think I'm going to hand over to Hadai for our next part. Thank you so much.
So for the next part, it's going to be a little bit of a movement. We're going to stand up and move the chairs a little bit to the side, and we're going to find a little space in the middle to engage in some kirtan. While it's happening, Maharaj can speak a little bit about 2 minutes about what is kirtan and what is maybe something to do with communication.
All right, yes, so yes, please do stand up. You can do some stretching exercises. We don't want anyone pulling a muscle. All right, everyone. So yeah, please do come. This space here is the cheapest space in the room, so you can all come. Don't worry. Yeah, you can come closer. Please do come in. So we're going to do Kirtan. For those of you who are here for the first time, this is a very beautiful kind of way to just sing, to kind of connect through sound vibration with something beyond New York City. And we're going to be chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. I think all of you are familiar. Many of you will be familiar. These are ancient Sanskrit names. Krishna means the all-attractive one. Rama means the reservoir of pleasure. And Hare refers to the energy of Krishna. And essentially it's a call to be connected with divinity, to kind of rediscover our deeper purpose. So the way in which we do it is we sing the mantra once. Hare will sing, and then we'll all repeat, and then he'll sing, we'll all repeat, and we'll have instruments, and yeah, just relax, enjoy it, close your eyes, sing, and if you feel inspired, you can also dance, and do some wrestling as well. Hare Krishna. So if everyone can repeat after me, Hare Krishna! Hare Krishna! That was about 2, we can go to 4. Hare Krishna! Hare Krishna! Krishna Krishna! Krishna Krishna! Hare Hare! Hare Hare! Hare Rama! Hare Rama! Hare Rama! Hare Rama! Rama Rama! Hare Hare!
Thank you, Maharaj, for the about Kirtan. There is one extra step to Kirtan. It's very amazing. People this is a very scientific move. You may get hurt. Krishna, would you like to show the scientific dance move for today? Whoa! It's a Swami step. Do it again.
It goes like this.
Okay.
And then hold on.
Hold on.
Go like this.
Oh! So everybody can do, okay, everybody do 1 and back and then 2. And feel free to raise your hands also. Yeah. Cool, raise your hands. And then we'll sing together. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Everyone! Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Everyone! Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yeah, yeah. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Repeat after me. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Everyone together. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna,
Thank you very much. Give yourself all a round of applause. So, the next part, if you go right through that door, you take a left, there's the dinner, if you have the appetite for it. We only request, we don't have enough chairs over there, so we have a BYOC, bring your own chair. So if you can grab a chair and go take dinner, we appreciate that. Also, Martin's books are here, Raj is here. Have fun, guys. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, I got some books.
You good?
Yeah. It's such an honor. Yeah, I took a workshop based on your.
Does it work?
Need a pen. The curriculum. Yeah, here.
Oh, you did Gita tonight?
Yeah, I joined that workshop. Yeah, we did it. We did this class.
Was it rewarding? Was it good?
Yes. It was easy because I started watching the videos after you did it.